Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Zetro's Toxic Vault. Alongside our sickening little spider red rum, I am sitting next to Mr. Walter Morgan.
He's running the rafters.
You know why? Because it's cold, and spiders don't like when it's cold. And so
he's getting his exercise.
Looking for fucking victims. You know why? Because everybody's staying in. He got nobody to bite lately. Anyway, we are going to do an artist spotlight today. And I would like to talk about my favorite bands. There's only a million of them, but things that pretty much, constructed me into what I am. I think you identify with a lot of those bands that I do, especially this one.
I learned to appreciate them more by reading the history and pulling up some facts.
And we are talking about the Ramones.
From 1974 from Queens, New York.
Amazing how, everybody thought they were four brothers named the Ramones, but they weren't.
I found that out.
Yeah.
They had me fooled.
I think Joey was Jeffrey Hyamith or something like that. And is his name? They all had different names. Anyway, I thought it was cool.
Hyman.
Jeffrey Hyman. They were the
John Cummings.
They were the beginning of what was, kind of like,
Mark
like Exodus
Bell,
was the beginning
Christopher
of
Ward.
being in thrash metal. They were the beginning and the first sounds of punk. And if you could think of punk rock music, you would always think of bands like especially from the 70s, Sex Pistols, The Clash, and obviously the Ramones. And to me, man, them, Dead Kennedys, I just loved it. I mean, I listened to the Oi stuff. We had Waddy on the show before. I love
and they influenced metal, right?
Exploited and Discharge. I would say they just influenced the
punk
raw,
in general. I'm saying
raw. Definitely. But the raw attitude, the very simple, like beat on the brat with a baseball bat. That's the greatest lyrics ever. Blitzkrieg
and it's their logo with the baseball bat and the eagle.
Hey ho, let's go. Who doesn't know Hey ho, let's go? What a great rock anthem. What a way to
let's start with the name
show.
Because Ramon came about because they were inspired by Paul McCartney of the Beatles, who would check into hotels as Paul Ramon. And they performed 2,263 concerts, and we got to see him.
I've seen him. I saw him a few times. But I seen him one of the last times, yeah.
And we were talking about that.
Yeah.
And so for us, that was a heavy concert, right? It was a Wolfgang's Road Show at 3rd and Harrison.
It was at 3rd and Harrison. Club. Yeah, it was a Wolfgang's Road Show, exactly.
And we both know it and remember it so much because it was a tragic show. At the end, a photographer for Bill Graham, his personal photographer, Randy
Bachman, very famous guy,
and he was a nice guy. Remember him?
Nice guy. You seen him in a lot of the.
We see him backstage all the time.
See him in Huey Lewis video, and he's in Greg Ken Bay Area guy.
He's like a midget or a dwarf.
They say they're called little people, Walt. Just like when they're not really midgets, they're little people. I mean, just like women can't drive, you know what I mean? So
it was a dark night, of course, and it was a little rainy out. And that's a kind of a dark South of Market club. And he came out.
Somebody ran a red light, or I think it was the driver's fault.
They didn't see him. It's a pretty fast little thoroughway there, Harrison Street. And they hit him, and he died on the spot there.
That's wild, because I do associate the Ramones with that very much so. For some reason, I just do, you know what I mean?
I walked up to him after he had been hit. So for me, it's still in my mind.
That's wild.
Anyway,
this band for me, growing up, listening to the harder stuff, especially when I started getting into punk music and going to San Francisco and seeing, going to the On Broadway and going to the Mabuhay Gardens and the Stone and any punk clubs that would have in there, listening to Maximum Rock and Roll on every Wednesday night and listening that. For me, this was the rebel. This stuff was hard and vicious and in your face, and I just loved the whole mentality. Four guys in leather jackets,
and their songs are so short. They're rarely you get a 3 minute.
That's a normal
song.
Punk song.
Right.
That's why they were so true to that.
Rolling Stone magazine lists them as number 26 in the 100 greatest artists of all time, and number 17 in VH1's 100 greatest artists of rock.
And then also inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, too, weren't they, Walt?
Yep. They sure were in 2002. And in their first year of eligibility. And that's always just like a Hall of Fame player, when you get inducted on your first
vote in.
That's right. That says a lot. And they have a Lifetime Grammy Achievement Award also.
Yeah, because music like that and music like ours doesn't necessarily get
and
Grammy
they
attention.
were guys that met in a middle-class neighborhood in Forest Hills in New York, which is a borough of
and played
Queens.
And I mean, they were one of the stable bands at CBGB's, along with like Blondie and Talking Heads.
The Plasmatics.
Plasmatics.
They had a run there, right, where they had always played a lot of shows there, and I think that club broke a lot of these bands, right, Steve?
Oh, yeah. I must say that was definitely, for this genre of music, if you were nobody, if you didn't play CBGB's, Exodus even played CBGB's before.
And the singer was in a glam band called Sniper from 1972. Yeah, and he switched over. A lot of musicians have gone from glam to metal.
Or to punk.
That's true. And like I said, they were formed in 1974. And
how many records?
Well, they made their debut at CBGB's on October 16th in 1974. And they became regulars at the club, playing 74 times.
Probably like
by
us
the end
at
of the
Ruthie's,
year in
dude.
1974.
Probably like us at
74
Ruthie's,
times.
All of the bands that played at Ruthie's in the days played there. I can't count how many times fucking Legacy played Ruthie's, man.
Right, and like you did say, they were all wear black leather jackets, and they had their look, right?
That was their look.
And I think that even translates how it inspired other people to dress when you got on stage. And
I think metal bands too, because metal bands caught that total,
Well, you could definitely tell there was something different about them.
We were always wearing leather jackets and that sort of thing, trying to look like that. So
right. So let's see. And their debut album was in February of '76. And let's see. What do we have here? In '76, which contains Blitzkrieg Pop and I Want to Be Your Boyfriend and Hey Ho, Let's Go. Now, that's probably their most popular album.
Blitzkrieg Bop is Hey Ho, Let's Go. There, young man.
Okay, well.
It is, of course. Yeah. It is because it's their, to me, it's the Ramones Raw, but the first two records had Tommy on them, I believe, even though he went on to continue to produce and write songs for the Ramones.
He didn't like touring. I read that.
So that's where they got Marky in the band.
And then 77.
And he's actually him. There was a drummer who was in for a little while named Richie. There was Richie Ramone, and then CJ, I believe, are the only ones left.
There was one guy that only played 2 gigs, and he just couldn't handle the beat or something, and they got rid of him real quick. But anyway, then in 77 they had Leave Home, and also in 77 Rocket to Russia. And in 78, they had Road to Ruin, which had I Wanna Be Sedated.
Yep.
That's another huge hit for them.
I Just Want to Have Something to Do Tonight. That was in Rock and Roll High School, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. Riff Randall and Rock and Roll High School. I love that.
Then in 1980, they did End of the Century, and that was produced by Phil Spector, the Big Wall of Sound.
Yep, I know that.
And it is said that he held Johnny at gunpoint, forced him to repeatedly play a riff. And in that year, it was the highest charting album of number 44. Baby, I Love You.
We know how Phil Spector ended up, so I guess we'll just have to believe that from here.
And then we had Pleasant Dreams in 81, which was more metal, so they went through a metal phase in here.
I think everybody, come on, everybody morphs. Everybody tries to follow the time. It was a sign of the times.
And they had, in 83, they did Subterranean Jungle, which has the Chambers Brothers classic hit, Time Has Come Today. You know that song, right?
Yep.
And in 84, they did Too Tough to Die. And in 86, it was Animal Boy. And Halfway to Sanity in 1987. And Brain Drain in 1989.
Yep, had Pet Cemetery on it. That's from the movie The First Pet Cemetery.
So 11
movie.
albums.
11.
In that time. And I think, when did we see them? Oh, no,
We
there's...
saw them at about 80,
okay.
probably 87
Actually,
or
there's 14 albums
86.
because it goes on here. Mondo Bizarro
Mondo
in
Bizarro.
92, Acid Eaters in 93, and Adios Amigos in 1995, which was their last. So, they had a really good career, 20 years, a little over 20 years, right?
I mean, solid career. If anybody talks about it, everybody knows who the Ramones are. They touch everybody in this business. A-list, B-list, I don't care who you are. If you've listened to any type of hard or heavy type of music, the Ramones have touched your life in one way or the other. Leave me comments. I want to know what you think. How did the Ramones, where was the first time you guys heard the Ramones, Was it in that movie Rock and Roll High School? Did you hear them before that? That's about the time I was getting into punk music.
Anyway, also their artwork and visual imagery they're known for, and especially their logo. If you've ever seen the eagle, it looks like a presidential seal, and it's iconic. And he's holding a baseball bat in one talon, and it's very good, very classic,
definitely
old punk band that influenced lots of bands, and you can see how rated highly they are. So I learned a lot
today. That's why they still ring today.
And I thought when I saw them, that one time I did see them, they played a good set that night.
Yeah, right into each song. That's what I loved about them. There's no stop.
So what year would you say we saw them?
We saw them probably 87 or 88, something around there.
89, something like that.
Maybe.
I think, yeah,
Maybe. I think that might even been too late. I think 87 or 88 was more like it. Let me know when you guys went and saw the Ramones. Did you get to see the Ramones, and what you thought when you saw them at a show live? Especially if you're from New York, you got to see them really in their element.
Really, really. That's like seeing Legacy at Ruthie's, right?
Yeah, it's like seeing, like we were referencing that. So leave me some comments. Obviously, share this and subscribe to the channel, and we'll keep doing more and more artist spotlights. Right, Walt?
That's right.
All right. See you soon.
Good one.